Today I want to talk to you about the Tacket Stitch. This is a really fun stitch that essentially uses thread and you use it to wrap around how you bind your spine. So these are two examples of journals that I have made that have, this one has 4 signatures and then 2 sets of tacket stitching. And if you can see really closely, the thread has just been wrapped, and that's what we call packing the stitch. It's just wrapped around the outside thread. So I'm going to show you how to do that. When you're doing the tacket stitch though, you can decide how many signatures you want and how long you want each set of stitches to be. If you have a longer spine, then you might want to have more stitches. This is one that I've been working on that has not been finished yet, and these I did a lot longer. The only dilemma of this is it just takes you longer to do all the packing and wrapping. This one, as you can see, I've not quite finished yet. This one will end up having 3 signatures. So it's a lot of packing and wrapping of stitches. Today, I'm going to show you the stitch with a much smaller sketchbook. And this one, I have actually already created my jig. If you don't remember what your jig is, that is a scrap piece of paper that you use to know where to punch holes to make sure your pages and your spine are completely lined up and exactly where you want them to be. You can decide if you want to measure the same distance and the width between yours. I think it looks better to be symmetrical, but that is your call as the artist. Some people do some longer, they do them asymmetrical where it's not even, and you'll see some other artists out there who have done a lot of different things. In this book that I have by Keith Smith, it's called Books Without Paste or Glue. He gives some other examples of the tacket stitch in here, and you can see some are different lengths, some are different signatures, but this is kind of what we are going to be working on, the tacket binding or stitch. All right, so I've already created my jig, but just to remind you, if you want to create a more structured spine where it's going to be folded really nicely, this is what I recommend. To measure your book and find the midpoint. So this is a little under 10, so I'm going to center that ruler, and my midpoint would be right at 5. And it might be easier for you to use a pencil. I'm going to use a silver Sharpie so that you can see, and I'm going to make little marks where I want the center of my spine to be more structured. And then you can see I already have some here that found my midpoint. So, and if it helps you, go ahead and do them up against the edge so that you can lay your ruler out to make it nice and even. Then these marks make it really easy to match it up. You lay that ruler down on those marks. Then I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to crease the cover so that it makes a really nice fold for my structured spine. So I've got that side. Now I need to do this one. So I've got both edges of my spine more structured like that. Okay? Now I have already punched my holes, but just to remind you, when you have your jig, you can cut the jig to fit within that structured spine. That might be the easiest for you, and you might want to use a ruler to measure out where it's centered and stuff. I did this one just more by eyeball, but you can decide how you would like yours to be. And then you would take it and you would get, I have these foam door hangers. If you stack 2 of them together, you can then take your awl, and remember the awl is this sharp book binding tool that we punch holes with, and you would simply punch through the holes in your jig all the way through the cover. And we're going to do something similar for our pages. I already have my pages cut and folded to fit in that cover, but now I need to punch my holes. So you should also have another jig that goes inside your pages. This one, if you have not created it, as a reminder, you can take that spine jig and just line it up like this and punch right in the valley of your jig. So now I have the jig for my pages. So I'm going to take my pages, put this right inside. And then if you notice, our jig is longer because of the spine than our actual pages. So I just want to center that jig to make sure the holes aren't hanging off and they're not too close to the edge. And then I'm going to leave my pages kind of pinched together because when you're stitching it, it's going to help that needle slide through easier. Okay, page set number 1, and you can see these on the outside. Do my next one. Find the middle of your pages. That is one thing you do want to make sure before you punch your holes. And you know what? I want to show you something. I want to make sure that my holes are even because my jig is longer. I'm going to go back to this one I already punched and reline them up just to be sure they match. And I'm actually going to make a little mark so that I remember where it goes on the edge of my jig. So it is the same on both pages. If I was you for my sketchbook, unless you're doing this on your own time and at home, I would stick to 2 or 3 signatures just because you could also do 1, but the more signatures or sections of pages that you do, the longer it's going to take you. So just keep that in mind. All right, holes are punched. So now I'm ready to start stitching. Okay, so I want to get thread for my spine. Okay, you want to think about, okay, I have 2 sections, 2 signatures to stitch, and then I have 2 sections of thread. So I'm going to take 4 lengths of my spine. 2 times 2, 4 signatures. I'm going to do 4 lengths, and I'm going to use this thread so it shows up very nicely against the black so you can see it. So I'm going to give a little extra. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little extra room is always a good idea. Okay, the cool thing about this thread, it's waxed linen thread, and because it's been waxed, you can actually pinch it and it'll make it thinner, so it's easier to go through the eye of your needle. Remember, the eye is that hole you stick the thread through. Okay. Then the waxed linen thread is also super easy. If you just pinch it back like that, it usually stays in there. But I like to hold my needle right there on the eye so my thread does not come out. Okay, you will find that I have made some printed instructions about the Tacket stitch, and this number 7 is thread, needle, and start binding. So these are actually our simple steps for stitching that I'm going to go over. Okay, I'm going to start with the first signature, and I have on here from inside of the spine, so that would be here, exit hole 1 to the outside. So we're going to consider these 4 holes first. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's from the inside of the spine. I'm going to put it through my pages like this, and then I'm going to line it up with the hole in my cover. Okay, so inside my hole. And sometimes it's hard to get your needle through, so you just need to wiggle it till it comes through. Then you want to pull your thread until you leave a little tail inside. Maybe a little bit more than that, maybe like that. And then I like to hold my book with my thumb right here. You can also get some clips and clip right over top of that so it holds your pages and your spine and your tail. That's what we call that extra thread. Okay, so we have exited hole 1 to the outside, traveled down to hole 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna go here. And you know what? Mine actually went straight. I can feel it already on the inside. My needle's here, so that worked out really well. It must be really lined up. So I'm gonna go in here. If you have trouble getting it into your pages, you can also peel back your cover and look on the inside to find that needle to go inside your pages. All right, into hole number 3, I'm gonna pull tight, okay? Then the next one says from inside of 3, travel up to 2. 1, 2. I'm gonna go back in here. Wiggle through, see, it popped right back out. Wiggle through. Now, this, I've exited hole 2. Once outside, we're gonna pack the thread. That simply means to wrap it. So here we go. I'm going to take my needle under, and I'm making a loop. And I'm going to keep wrapping around this, and you want to try to get your thread to lay down flat right next to each other. Okay, so I am going to keep packing the thread till it reaches all the way down to this next hole. Okay, so wrapping, 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 trying to pull tight, but just remember when you get down here you're going to be able to tighten it. So keep packing it. Pretend like I have gotten all the way down. When you get here, then you are going to go into hole 4. So if I had packed all this, wrapped all that, then I would go here, and I'm going to show you, pretend like I've already done all that. And then you would pull it through and pull really tight. Then you would trim it after you tied it off. To tie it off, do a simple knot. I'm going to take my needle under the spine thread here, pull through, and then just go through that little spot again, and it would pull tight to make a knot. Okay? Then you could trim it really short right here. If you look on the inside of these other journals I've made, okay, you would see my spines and thread here. Okay? So that is how you do the tacket stitch. And you would snip it and then start over 1, 2, 3, 4 the holes down on this section down here. Okay? So, sorry, technical difficulties. Good luck stitching, and I can't wait to see your books when you're done.